This week, Kris Lahiri from Ignite is with us to have a heart-to-heart about your cybersecurity New Year's resolutions and keeping them past February. Then Derek Johnson from CRA's sister company, SC Media, joins us to talk about the huge levels of federal interest in cybersecurity right now. Finally, in the enterprise security news, we've got a little bit to talk about since we were off for a bit. Pantera announces a $150 million Series C. I'm calling them a yet another unicorn in cybersecurity. We've got a ton of them now. Urgevec Group merges with FishTech. Pretty big news there. Google acquires SOAR vendor Simplify. A European grocery store buys BAS vendor XM Cyber. Flashpoint acquires Vuln Intel vendor Risk-Based Security. Another big deal there. Recorded Future acquires Security Trails. Drama in the Israeli cybersecurity news. Security analyst is the number one best job of 2022. Microsoft to start rolling out its own hardware security chip. Some annoying words get banned. All that and more on this episode of Enterprise Security Weekly.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where we talk security vendors and aren't afraid to name names. It's Enterprise Security Weekly.
Attackers are only getting more proficient, so how can you proactively adapt your cybersecurity strategy? Core Security by Help Systems helps you uncover and prioritize the risks that pose the biggest threat to your organization. Core Impact is a penetration testing tool that safely finds and exploits vulnerabilities using the same techniques as attackers. You can conduct advanced pen tests with ease using certified exploits and automations. Take your engagements to the next level by pairing with Cobalt Strike, a threat emulation tool ideal for adversary simulations and red team operations. Learn more at securityweekly.com/core-security.
Welcome back to Enterprise Security Weekly after a bit of a break. Also, happy Peach Melba Day. This is episode number 256, recorded on Thursday, January 13th, 2022. I'm your host, Adrian Sanabria, and Peach Melba fan Tyler Shields is with me today. Hello, Tyler.
Dude, how did you know? Like, literally, I freaking love Peach Melba. So, yes, definitely a Peach Melba fan.
What are Peach Melbas? I didn't know about it before looking up, like, what the national days were for today.
It's a great question, and quite frankly, I am not entirely sure the difference between a peach cobbler and a peach melba, but I love peach anything, and I'll eat either one of them.
Well, I did
but
see
no
the
chocolate.
picture.
But no chocolate.
I'll tell you, the peach melba's in a glass. It's not a pie.
Ah, there it is. Okay, well, it's just so that makes it a melba if it's served in a glass, other than a tin or whatever a pie is made in.
Yeah, if you have your peach cobbler with some vanilla ice cream, you're not far from a peach melba, I don't think. But maybe some true peach melba fans will correct me. Jump in my DMs and yell at me.
I'm sure we'll get DM to hell on that one.
Also with us today, Katie Teitler. Do you have any opinions on peach melbas?
I don't really have opinions, but I have Wikipedia. And according to Wikipedia, Peach Melba is a dessert of peaches and raspberry sauce with vanilla ice cream. It was invented in 1892 or 1893 by the French chef Auguste Escoffier at the Savoy Hotel in London.
In honor of an Australian soprano, I believe.
Yes, the Australian soprano Nellie Melba.
And that's her stage name, which she got. She took her last name from the city of Melbourne.
There you go. Looks pretty good. I don't know if I've ever had it.
Sounds like both of you have been reading the same Wikipedia article coming into this show.
Well, Google searching is really hard.
Mine was all just from this one website that I get all these crazy, days of the year, national days and international days. It's amazing. I guess I understand why they do it, because without that calendar, I would have never heard of any of these desserts that have come up. It seemed to be a lot for desserts. I'm not sure why desserts get so many special days.
Because desserts are wonderful.
Good answer. Very good answer. One announcement here. If you have a specific guest or topic that you want us to cover in one of the shows, all you have to do is submit them by going to securityweekly.com/guests and completing the form there. We've made it super easy, nice new form. We review suggestions on a regular basis, and we'll reach out to you once we review them. Now today, for our interview, our first interview today, we have Kris Lahiri, co-founder and CSO, not CISO. You know, there is a distinction there that I'm going to drill into a little bit as we start the interview at Ignite. And he joins us today to talk about keeping your security New Year's resolutions. Kris spent many years designing and deploying large-scale infrastructure for Fortune 100s, but is now responsible for creating and implementing Ignite's global security and compliance strategies, policies, and controls. We often talk about what an interesting role is being a CISO at a company that has a product, at a vendor. But welcome to the show, Kris.
Thank you. Happy to be here, and Happy New Year to all of you.
Yeah, same to you. So as I alluded to, my first question is going to be about, the fact that you do have the shorter version of the CISO, the CSO, which often implies that you're responsible for more than just information security. There's realms of security outside just information security. Often it's a broader scope of responsibilities. But, before we get to that, just kind of interesting, it looked like, you've got an IT, more of a general tech IT background. What made you take the leap into not just IT security, but this kind of CISO role?
Sure. Let me get into that, Adrian. But very quickly, I'm a co-founder, which means I have 3 other compadres that we started the company with. There are 4 of us that started Ignite, which really is a company that manages and protects business critical content for all of our customers. All of our customers are, businesses of different sizes, small, medium, large. We got them in all sizes and across all industries. So in my original role, I was running a lot of the technical operations, data center operations, the actual cloud, and we now run the product and the service off of a cloud. So that transition into the cloud and everything was done by my team. But because we were very focused on businesses, we decided to take a more serious role on security before kind of cybersecurity was on vogue. So this goes back very early on, I would say almost 2010 or 2011, when I took on the security role. And that's been my main focus now over the last few years. It's interesting that you brought up this difference between the missing I, the CISO versus the CSO. And I think it's primarily because of the product that we are doing. So in my role, of course, I'm the CISO of almost 1,000-person company that is across 5 different locations, and now with remote work across many different locations. So for a mid-sized company of our size, a CISO's role is pretty well defined in terms of what we look for from just purely the company standpoint. But because of what Ignite is as a product, I do talk to many of our customers and CISOs that buy our product, as well as in different forums. And I've realized that the influence that we have on building the product and the overall security posture of the company is almost as important. So I look at CISO as more of a company security role. And just because of where Ignite is and the product that we have, I end up having a wider role per se, and hence the CSO in my title. That long answer, but I hope that answers your question.
No, yeah, it absolutely does. And it's always interesting, having to juggle everything that you have to juggle, because you tend to be an evangelist for the company, hence your presence on a podcast here, talking publicly about what you do. You've got the corporate role, right? Protecting the actual company itself and your customers. And then you tend to often have like a product, some kind of input into the product, right? Not necessarily the product manager. You wouldn't want to have the full role of product manager on top of being CISO, but I'm sure you do have some input.
Oh yeah, we absolutely. I think our products team actually. Again, I don't want to go too much into describing Ignite. I think we have a lot of other things to cover, but in general, product managers take in input from our existing customers as well as new things they want to build, and we definitely have an influence as we listen to so many different security professionals, whether it's in the industry or in a specific vertical, or even our customers directly. So yeah, I do end up having to influence some of our prioritization and all based on that.
Yeah. Yeah, so kind of jumping into some of these topics we want to talk about today. New Year's resolutions, is that, I'm not sure if that's a thing for most enterprises, but usually any large amount of time off, usually a large number of people in an organization take time off in the summer and in the winter, after we have all these holidays. So it tends to be a good time to come back, clean slate, brain empty, right? Refreshed and ready to tackle some new problems or maybe some old problems that you're stuck on. What are some of the things that you think organizations should be more focused on as we jump into 2022 here?
Adrian, I don't know if you're like me on a personal resolution, every year. We've seen that you end up revisiting a lot of the resolutions. It's still the same things that you want to do better at. You may have hit some of the things in the previous year, but you want to get better next year. And I feel like, even as a CISO or as a security person, a company's resolutions can be similar. Unless you're completely changing your direction at the company or the company itself is pivoting to something else. I feel when we start the new year at whatever you call that year marker, whether it's a calendar thing, whether it's a fiscal thing, whatever is that marker appropriate to you, I feel a quick revisit of your overall goals is definitely important. And there are some things I can tell you specifically from an Ignite standpoint. We just wrapped up our annual audits in Q4 of every year. That's kind of scheduled, and that's how it works. So when we come back in the new year, we are kind of brimming with either findings of the audit or new things that have happened since, and we are ready to kind of revisit some of these topics starting off month one of the new year. So I think we'll get into a few of those, but there are some very specific things. I think the goals, like I said, do not change much from a security practitioner's point of view, right? There are some core things that you want to do from your user base, from your content and other functionality and other things that you're looking at. I think what ends up happening though is just like you said, with almost a fresh head after the holidays, or whatever was the milestone that you're coming back from, a break or anything like that. I think revisiting these goals with more specifics on, okay, so what are we going to do differently or better this year is the main motivation, I think. And at least I have my team all excited about chipping away at our overall goal, but we have some new things that we are planning to do this year as well. And I hope that's true of almost every other practitioner here.
Yeah, definitely. And what Ignite does, I think, tends to come close to some of those central goals that companies should be worried about. But I think one thing cybersecurity is fairly unique, and I think we like to think we're unique in a lot of ways that we're really not. Like our current hiring challenges, stuff like that, but it's a different discussion. But I think we are uniquely susceptible to distraction. Just the amount of vendors in the space, the speed with which that they're constantly changing and growing. Even on the attacker side, 10 years ago, ransomware was not even in our vocabulary. And all of a sudden, it's by a huge margin the most important thing that a lot of us are worrying about. So it's sticking to those goals and constantly coming back and saying, are these activities my team is spending most of its time on related to these goals or pushing us forward in these goals? Or are we just treading water here? I don't think it happens enough. And a lot of the companies that I advise are kind of on that hamster wheel, that treadmill that never really goes anywhere, but maybe it makes them feel like they're making progress, right?
Absolutely. I'll give you a quick example of what I meant by, the goals are kind of the same, but what we are planning to do this year is different. One of the big ones, which, obviously being a co-founder of the company, I've seen the company grow from, like 4 of us to almost 1,000 employees, like I said. And I've realized, especially in these last 2 years of remote work and other things that, the wider economy has forced upon us, I had never paid as much attention to our employee security training as much before. Earlier, we've always been doing security training. I would review the modules that people are having to take on, and it would be a more or less a audit requirement more than anything else. But I would say over the last 2 to 3 years, we've realized that it's really important for everyone in the company. It does not matter what function you are. You may be someone, at the front desk, which doesn't exist anymore for many virtual companies.
Right.
It doesn't matter who you are in and at what level you play at in the company. A baseline security awareness, a baseline security hygiene is super important, right? And that was sort of underscored by the amount of BEC type attacks and the smishing attacks and all of these things that happen. A company like, let's say we were 100 or 200 employees, it didn't really matter as much at that time. Maybe things weren't as sophisticated, but still, I wouldn't hear of this type of an attack more than maybe once a few months. Now, with almost 1,000 employees, there isn't a day that goes by that someone doesn't, flag me on something. Oh, here's a potential fish, or here's how someone's trying to, like impersonate another co-founder or someone and get someone to do this. And there's a lot of tools, there's lots of interesting training and all of this available. And we are leveraging some of that. But this is one example of what something, was always a goal. Security awareness training for everyone has never been more important than right now, especially since we are trying to hit certain numbers of growth in terms of our employee count and also the fact that they're going to be worldwide. It's not going to be someone that I can pull in to an office or go have a hallway conversation with or anything like that. So how we approach this topic, how we go about, doing better at it is really important. That's just one example of a goal that stayed the same, but what are we doing different this year?
Yeah, and to your point, we actually have some stats that we didn't used to have now. So funding, was an all-time high funding for cybersecurity for startups, at least something around $20 billion in funding for cybersecurity startups last year. But then the attackers also had their best year ever. And I think cryptocurrency alone, they netted something like $10 billion. So they're raising like half the money that we're raising on this side. So there's competition on the funding. I'm saying funding with making air quotes here, but yeah, for sure, attackers are putting some of that into R&D. We're seeing them try different techniques and stuff like that. So yeah, it probably is important to have employees on the lookout for that. But also,
actually, to your point, Adrian, sorry, I had never heard of ransomware as a service before. This completely underscores the point you made on how that itself, the attacker side itself, is becoming a business.
Yeah, absolutely. Running them like a business, even in some cases, I've joked that it's not really a joke, but there's probably a non-zero overlap between people with certified ethical hacker certifications and people working for ransomware crews. I've heard of them putting out kind of these blind ads for pen testers, where potentially maybe some of these pen testers don't even know that they're hacking into companies illegally. Maybe they think it's a sanctioned pen test.
True. And I don't know that I don't think there's any clear answer or silver bullet to any of this, but it must just a general level of awareness on any of these things or all of these things, even for people who are not in the quote unquote tech world, right? You'll find a lot of folks who'll say, oh, I'm not tech savvy. I'm not a tech person. It doesn't matter anymore. I think there's a certain level of basic security awareness and hygiene that even, your my mom or parents and everyone needs to be aware of. That's just the reality of, our lives today. So.
Yeah. So shifting a bit, talking about data, about goals, what kind of goals should companies have around data? Because, on the one hand, I've often said, our industry is going to tackle data security last because it's so tricky to do. Data is, on one hand, often companies' most valuable asset. Maybe their IP, maybe it's the key way that they make money. Depending on if they're an advertising firm, something like that. But at the same time, with attacks and regulations and things like that, data can also be your biggest liability. So what should people be thinking about in terms of handling their data, goals with their data?
I don't know if you have a view into our actual corporate deck or not, but we are going really strong on exactly this point. We say that data has really two states. It's either value or risk, and I'll tell you a little bit more about it. You just keep in mind the cost of storage has been going down. I won't say exponentially, but it has been dramatically reducing, especially with the advent of all types of cloud solutions and other things that everybody has access to, right? So what is happening as a behavior is people aren't that concerned about paying for storage. Earlier, while storage was very expensive, people were always watching how, and I'm talking about company resources, right? And I'm sure a portion of this is valid even for individuals. But as a company would keep a very close eye on their storage consumption because someone was paying quite a bit of money for it. And hence, they had certain types of data cleanliness rules. I'm not even going down yet on what you're required to do from a regulatory standpoint or anything like that. I'm just saying in general, people were used to cleaning up storage because it used to cost more. But now with the cost of storage dropping so much, we're seeing that behavior change a lot where people are like, they don't care. They're like, they'll just let it grow. If you had a few terabytes now, and then that very quickly went to a few hundred terabytes, they don't seem to care about the cost as much. But where they're trading that whatever is the cost there is that they're taking on more risk. If you have a whole bunch of sensitive data that you just have there and you didn't go and clean up, now in case there is some type of a breach or something that happened, your area or surface area just grew exponentially just because you did not take care of some old data that you had no business keeping, right? So we are going down, and again, you can layer in all kinds of things on like financial regulations, which need 7 years of data to be there. Construction and building regulations need 25 years of data to be there, etc. But I think this is a gold mine of trying to look at data lifecycle management and in a holistic way to reduce the state at which your data is. You keep your valuable data, which you need, easy, secured, in a proper way in which you collaborate with your partners and so on. But all the other stuff, which is a risk, you need systems, you need other processes in place that will just take care of that for you. And it's a big focus for us, but it kind of, you hit the nail on the head when you talked about these two states of data.
If you created a reality TV show called Cyber Hoarders or Tech Hoarders or something like that, I would watch that.
Yes, data hoarders is a real thing. And again, my feeling is that it's probably because it's not hitting someone on the wallet as much. So they're just afraid to get rid of it. They're like, what if I may need it?
So I have a question for you. So, the data hoarder thing, what if I need it, right? Isn't there a certain level of value in hoarding data for the long term, in the sense that maybe we can machine learn it or use some kind of algorithmic, data analysis to make smarter decisions 20, 50, 100 years from now, right? Now, that may not make sense in a business capacity, in which case there's risk attached to the data hoarding. And I guess there's risk attached to any level of data hoarding. But do we offset? Is there an actual offset of potential return on collection of data that we should keep in mind from a risk management perspective as a CISO?
Absolutely, Tyler, and I think it's important to anything that does machine learning these days. You always hear about it. Is like it needs more data, right? This training model needs more data, and that model needs more data, and so that is an argument where a group of people will say, I just want to keep all of this data. But there's also the flip side where, if you needed it for machine learning and that type of thing, there's a lot of info that you can keep from just the metadata portion. Like I'll pick something on the security front. If you needed to keep a whole bunch of events and how that trended, and you were going to go build some new model on this type of stuff, you could have a certain, let's say, a snapshotted version if you did need to go back 10 to 15 years. But how you prepare it and how you keep it is really important from the security standpoint. It doesn't mean that you need to keep 20 years of data available with the same level of access and everything as your most current data, right? It also doesn't mean that, hey, you deleted 20 years of valuable data if that's the industry you're in, right? Like for example, anybody in the biotech world or life sciences and all of that do want to keep that type of data. But I think that's where you can layer in other security models of who has what access. You could create different types of archives and those types of things for just stuff that you absolutely need to keep around. But in general, I would still say we should first start with what do you absolutely need, and then deal with this other bucket of, okay, if I don't need this, can I just purge it? In some cases, yes. In some cases, maybe not. We create a different sort of moat for keeping that.
Yeah, definitely. So, it's just as you were talking, I was thinking AWS Glacier. They probably, despite how cheap that is, they probably make a lot of money off that. Probably a lot of folks saying, well, just in case. We'll it used to be tapes, like we'll keep these tapes in Iron Mountain or in a closet somewhere. Now it's Glacier, right?
So it's funny, actually, Adrian. Let me jump in here. I think you're making an interesting point. Years ago, it used to be tapes kept in a stored lock facility. Everybody backed up everything, took tapes of everything, locked everything up, tested it, and they kept them indefinitely because there was no risk in the sense that it was sitting inside of Iron Mountain.
Right.
But now that we're storing online, now that we're storing in Glacier, now that we're storing in all these systems that come with a certain level of risk because of the connectivity of it, that is where the actual dynamic that now requires us to purge and delete and clean and be more data hygienic, if that's a real word, right? So that the pseudo anonymized data actually fits in a way that we can make it usable in a storage scenario. So I think it's kind of interesting to understand that dynamic and to get your comments actually on the delta between how it used to be versus how it is now with regards to storing that long term?
Well, I would argue that the long-term tape thing is a little bit of a false sense of security, right? Because I have personally actually lost a few tapes, which we weren't able to recover, and then we ended up having to do it a different way. But that was many years back. The thing that I that really hit home for me was the 2018 GDPR requirement that came through about defensible deletion of data. Right now, consider how, and I know it's primarily an EU thing, but you can be sure that similar things are going to make their way across the world, right? But specifically from GDPR standpoint, this thing about if someone says I have the right to be forgotten and now you need to delete everything that you have on me and show me what you deleted from, people with tape backups and things like that had a massive struggle trying to show things like that, right? But that's just one example. I think that your meta point, Tyler, is still true, is that it is easier for sure to access archive data or these other formats of data. And hence it has become more important for who has what type of access and all of that, which you may not have paid attention to earlier. While you were doing tape backup, you knew that, hey, it's an Iron Mountain and only those people, it's a much smaller subset of, even your admins that can even request a tape to be loaded or request it back. And also you felt safer that way, right? So that is the first thing, is look at access control of who has access to your archives.
Yeah, I totally love that you brought in the compliance side of it, the changes in requirements, because it completely changes how we do things and it changes how data storage and data security as a business is run. So excellent point.
Yeah, exactly. And we were asking our customers, like, how will you satisfy, a GDPR requirement? And the honest, this is a good answer. This is the best that they could do. Is they would say we aggregate these things across a certain time because GDPR was giving you, I think, 30 or 70 days. So they would aggregate all of these requests and then do a massive purge, rewrite their tapes without that data. And I was like, man, that's a lot of, someone's actually doing a lot of manual work, even with all the fancy robotic arm, DLT libraries and all of that. Is still a lot of work that someone had to do to take care of something like this.
Oh man, those are rough memories you're bringing back there. Oh man, I remember spending months. We had one a worm robotic worm library that was malfunctioning and only worked with software that ran on Windows 95 and used a licensed dongle that plugged into the serial port. Good Lord, what a mess.
And losing, bit rot is a real thing, right? For people like us that have exabytes of data, the fact that there is actually something going wrong, even at a software level, is a real thing. But you can throw more resources at it as well. You can write other software that does sampling and testing the validity, the integrity of data, and so on, right? So it feels that there are more capabilities available, but the security, there has to be an oversight there in terms of, who has what type of access, are things done purely through service accounts and all of that. And the data hygiene comment you made, Tyler, is very true.
So, Kris, as we wrap up the conversation here, do you have any good resources for planning out data handling, data retention policies, that kind of stuff that you can point people to?
I'm not drawing a blank on this right now, but data lifecycle management is actually a thing that a lot of different companies are proposing different solutions to. Ignite's one of them for sure. We come at it from this whole value versus risk perspective, but in general, data lifecycle management is becoming a really important thing, industry specific. Like I've said, life sciences or financial industry and SEC regulations have different things here. But I would point people to data lifecycle management as let's say, a Google term to look at. And there are some really good resources there right off the bat.
Good stuff. Again, thanks, Kris, for joining us today. Kris is the CSO at Ignite, and you can follow him on Twitter at Governance Guru. I think that's correct.
Yes, that's right.
All right. Thank you very much for joining us today, Kris.
Thanks, guys. Great to be here.
And stay tuned. When we come back, we're going to talk cybersecurity mania on the Hill with Derek Johnson from SE Media.